The letter trembled in Ethan's hands, its edges fraying like his courage. "You're no son of ours," it read, the words slicing deeper than any knife could. At 22, he'd lost his family in a single night, all for loving who he did. He sat on the creaking porch of his grandmother's old house in Willow Creek, Tennessee, the only place he had left to go. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and regret, the kind that clung to you like damp clothes. Ethan's dark eyes, usually bright with quiet humor, were dull now, staring at the gravel road that stretched into the fading light. Grandma Ruth appeared in the doorway, her silver hair catching the last rays of the sun. At 78, she moved with a deliberate grace, her cardigan swaying as she stepped onto the porch. Without a word, she sat beside him, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of his thoughts. "They'll come around, Ethan," she said softly, her voice like warm tea on a cold morning. "And if they don't, you've got me." Ethan let out a shaky laugh, more bitter than amused. "You're the only one. Gran, Mom and Dad, they looked at me like I was a stranger, like I'd betrayed them." He crumpled the letter tighter, his knuckles whitening. "They didn't even let me explain." Ruth's hand found his, her fingers thin but strong. "People fear what they don't understand, sweetheart. But fear doesn't get to define you. You're still my Ethan, brave, kind, and stubborn as a mule." She smiled, and for a moment, the weight on his chest lifted. But the weight returned as he thought of the shouting match 2 nights ago. His parents' dining room had felt like a courtroom, their faces twisted with disgust as he admitted he was gay. His mother's tears were not for him, but for her own shattered expectations. His father's voice, cold and final, had banished him. "Don't come back until you fix yourself." His older brother, Caleb, just stared at the floor, silent. Only Ruth had called him afterward, her voice steady over the phone. "Come home, Ethan. This is your home now." Willow Creek was a small town, the kind where everyone knew your business before you did. Ethan had grown up here, running through fields with Caleb, sneaking cookies from Ruth's kitchen, dreaming of a life bigger than this place. But now, the town felt like a cage. He'd seen the whispers at the gas station this morning, the sideways glances from people he'd known his whole life. The Carter boys one of them. They'd murmured, as if his love was a disease. "I don't know how to do this, Gran," Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was ready to tell them, but I didn't expect it to hurt this much." Ruth's eyes softened, but there was a fire in them too. "Pain's a teacher, Ethan. It's cruel, but it shows you who you are, and who's worth keeping." She paused, her gaze drifting to the horizon. "When I was your age, I lost someone I loved because I was too afraid to fight for them. I won't let you make that mistake." Ethan frowned, catching the weight in her words. "Who'd you lose, Gran?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, brushing off her cardigan. "Come inside. I've got something to show you." Inside, the house smelled of cedar and old books, a comforting contrast to the chaos in Ethan's heart. Ruth led him to her study, a cluttered room filled with photo albums, yellowed letters, and a desk that looked like it had seen the Great Depression. She pulled a small wooden box from a shelf, its surface worn smooth by time. "This," she said, "is my story, and maybe it'll help you find yours." Ethan's curiosity stirred, a flicker of light in the dark. He reached for the box, but Ruth held it close, her eyes searching his. "Not yet," she said. "You need to be ready. For now, let's get some dinner in you. Can't fight the world on an empty stomach." As they moved to the kitchen, Ethan felt a spark of something new, hope. Maybe. Or defiance. He didn't know what secrets Ruth was hiding, but her unwavering love was enough to keep him standing. For the first time since his world had crumbled, he felt like he wasn't alone. But Willow Creek wasn't done with him yet. Tomorrow, he'd face the town, the whispers, and the truth about who he was. And somewhere in Ruth's box, a secret waited, one that would change everything. The morning sun cut through Willow Creek like a spotlight, exposing every crack in the town's facade. Ethan woke to the sound of Ruth humming in the kitchen, the smell of bacon pulling him from a restless sleep. He wasn't ready for today, not for the stairs, not for the silence that screamed louder than words. He pulled on a faded flannel and jeans, his reflection in the mirror showing a face he barely recognized. Dark circles framed his eyes, and his jaw was tight with the weight of yesterday's rejection. But Ruth's words echoed in his mind. "You're still my Ethan, brave, kind, and stubborn as a mule." He clung to that, a lifeline in the storm. Downstairs, Ruth slid a plate of eggs and bacon across the table. "Eat," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You're gonna need your strength." "For what?" Ethan asked, poking at the eggs. "To face Mrs. Larson at the grocery store. She'll probably pray over me in aisle 3. Ruth chuckled, but her eyes were serious. "For you, Ethan. To face you." She sat across from him, her hands folded. "This town's small, but it's not your whole world. You decide what it means to be here." Ethan wanted to believe her, but the knot in his stomach tightened. He'd grown up with these people, church picnics, football games, summer fairs. Now, they'd turned on him, their judgment sharper than any sermon. He thought of Caleb, his brother, who hadn't even looked at him as he left. That betrayal stung deepest. After breakfast, Ethan stepped outside, the gravel crunching under his boots. The town square was a short walk, but it felt like a battlefield. At the diner, Old Man Jenkins glanced up from his coffee, his eyes narrowing. Across the street, 2 women whispered behind their hands, their gazes flicking to Ethan like he was a cautionary tale. He kept his head down, but each step felt heavier, the weight of their judgment pressing against his chest. He reached the hardware store, where he'd worked summers as a teen. His old boss, Mr. Tate, was sweeping the sidewalk. "Ethan," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Heard about the trouble. You okay?" Ethan froze, surprised by the question. Yeah. I'm staying with Gran." Tate nodded, leaning on his broom. "Folks around here talk too much. Don't let him get to you. Ruth's got your back, she always has." The words were small, but they warmed Ethan like a fire on a winter night. He managed a nod, then kept walking, his heart a little lighter. Maybe not everyone in Willow Creek saw him as a pariah. Back at the house, Ruth was waiting on the porch, the wooden box from last night in her lap. "Ready to talk?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. Ethan sat beside her, the box between them like a silent promise. "What's in there?" "Gran, you said it was your story." Ruth's fingers traced the box's edges, her eyes distant. "When I was young, I loved someone I wasn't supposed to. Her name was Clara." Ethan's breath caught. "Her." Ruth nodded, a sad smile playing on her lips. It was the 1960s. Things were different, harsher. "Clara and we were careful, but not careful enough. My family found out, and they made me choose, her or them." "What did you do?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I chose wrong," Ruth said, her voice cracking. "I let her go. I married your grandfather, built a life, but I never stopped loving her. This box, it's all I have left of her." Ethan's mind reeled. His grandmother proper, Church-going Ruth had loved a woman. The revelation hit him like a tidal wave, reshaping everything he thought he knew about her. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I was ashamed," Ruth admitted. "Not of Clara, but of my cowardice. I didn't want you to carry that shame. Ethan, you're braver than I was. You told your truth, even when it hurt." Ethan's throat tightened. He reached for her hand, and for a moment, they sat in silence, two souls bound by secrets and strength. The box remained unopened, its contents a mystery for another day. But Ethan felt a shift inside him, a spark of courage, fueled by Ruth's story. As the sun climbed higher, Ethan knew he couldn't hide forever. Willow Creek was his battleground, and he'd face it, not just for himself, but for Ruth and the love she'd lost. The next few days in Willow Creek were a tightrope walk. Ethan moved through town like a ghost, avoiding eye contact but feeling every stare. Ruth's revelation about Clara lingered in his mind, a quiet fire that kept him going. He started helping at the house, fixing the porch steps and weeding the garden, tasks that grounded him. Ruth watched him work, her eyes bright with pride. "You're stronger than you know," she'd say, passing him a glass of sweet tea. But Ethan wasn't so sure. One afternoon, he ran into Caleb at the gas station. His brother was pumping gas, his broad shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of their family's anger. Ethan's heart raced, torn between hope and hurt. "Caleb," he called, his voice unsteady. Caleb turned, his face a mask of conflict. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "Living," Ethan said, sharper than he meant. "Gran took me in. You know, after you all kicked me out." Caleb's jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that. Dad, he's just—" "Save it," Ethan cut in. "You didn't say a word. You let them throw me away." Caleb looked away, his silence louder than any argument. Finally, he muttered, "I didn't know what to say. I still don't." He climbed into his truck and drove off, leaving Ethan with a hollow ache in his chest. Back at Ruth's, Ethan found her in the study, the box open on her desk. Old letters spilled out, their ink faded but legible. Clara's words. Ruth said, her voice soft. "She wrote to me even after I broke her heart." Ethan picked up a letter, the paper fragile under his fingers. "My dearest Ruth, I'll love you always, no matter the distance." The words hit him hard. A love that refused to die despite the world's cruelty. "What happened to her?" he asked. Ruth's eyes glistened. "She moved to Chicago, built a life. She passed a few years ago. I never saw her again. But I kept these." She gestured to the box. "They remind me what I lost and what I can still fight for through you." Ethan's resolve hardened. He couldn't change his family's minds, but he could live his truth. That evening, he went to the town's only coffee shop, a place he'd avoided since the rumors started. Inside, he saw Jamie, a friend from high school who'd always been kind. Jamie waved him over, his smile genuine. "Heard you're staying with Ruth," Jamie said, sliding a coffee across the table. "How you holding up?" Ethan hesitated, then let the truth spill. "It's hard. My family, they're done with me. But Granch my rock." Jamie leaned forward, his voice low. "I'm gay too, Ethan. Haven't told many people. But I see you. You're not alone." The confession stunned Ethan, but it also lifted him. For the first time, he felt a flicker of belonging. He left the coffee shop with a new determination, Ruth's story and Jamie's words fueling his courage. But trouble was brewing. That night, Ethan found a note slipped under Ruth's door. "Leave town. Freak." The words were scrawled in angry red ink. A coward's threat, Ethan's hands shook as he showed it to Ruth. She read it, her face hardening. "They don't get to win," she said, crumpling the note. "We'll face this together." Ethan nodded, but fear gnawed at him. The town's judgment was closing in, and he wondered how much more he could take. Ruth's box sat on the desk, its secrets still unfolding, promising answers that might save Heimer break him further. The note burned a hole in Ethan's mind, its red ink a warning he couldn't ignore. He stayed close to Ruth's house, the world outside feeling like a minefield. But Ruth refused to let him hide. "You don't shrink for them," she said, her voice fierce. "You stand tall." Ethan tried. He went back to the coffee shop, meeting Jamie again. They talked for hours, sharing stories of fear and small victories. Jamie's quiet confidence was a lifeline, a reminder that Ethan wasn't alone. But the whispers followed him: grocery store, library, even church. Willow Creek's judgment was relentless. One evening, Ethan found Ruth in the garden, her hands in the dirt. The box was on the bench beside her. "Open. There's more," she said, wiping her hands. "Clara wasn't just my love. She was my courage." She handed Ethan a photo, yellowed but clear. Two young women stood arm in arm, laughing under a willow tree. Ruth, barely 20, her eyes bright with joy, and Clara, her dark curls framing a bold smile. "We were so happy," Ruth said, "until my father found out. He burned my letters, locked me in my room. I thought I'd lose her forever." Ethan's heart ached for her. "How did you survive that?" "I didn't. Not really," Ruth admitted. "I gave in. Married your grandfather. Had your mom. But Clara, she fought. She left town. Lived her truth. These letters, she sent them to a friend who passed them to me. They kept me going." Ethan looked at the photo, then at Ruth. "You're fighting now, Gran. For me." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Because I see her in you. Your fire. Your heart. Don't let them take that away." The next day, Ethan faced the town again, this time with Jamie at his side. They walked to the park, ignoring the stares. A group of teens snickered, one muttering a slur. Ethan's fists clenched, but Jamie's hand on his arm steadied him. "They're not worth it," Jamie said. "Let's keep moving." But the tension broke that night. Ethan and Ruth found their mailbox spray-painted with hate, the word freak glaring in the moonlight. Ethan's stomach churned, but Ruth's face was stone. "Enough," she said. "We're going to the town meeting tomorrow. They need to hear us." Ethan's heart raced. The town meeting was a public stage, a place where secrets were aired and judgments passed. "Gran, they'll tear us apart." "Maybe," she said, her eyes blazing. "But they'll have to face us first." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat with the box, reading Clara's letters. Her words were a beacon, full of love and defiance. "We are not wrong, Ruth. The world is. Live for us." Ethan felt her strength, and Ruth's, flowing into him. The town meeting loomed like a storm. Ethan didn't know if he was ready, but he knew he couldn't back down. Ruth's secret was his armor now, and together, they'd face Willow Creek's wrath. The town hall was packed, the air thick with anticipation and judgment. Ethan stood at the back, Ruth beside him, her hand gripping his arm. The wooden benches creaked under the weight of Willow Creek's residents, their faces a mix of curiosity and contempt. The mayor, a stout man with a politician's smile, opened the meeting. "We're here to discuss community matters," he said, his voice booming. "Anyone with concerns, step forward." Ruth squeezed Ethan's arm. That's us, she whispered. Ethan's heart pounded as they walked to the front. Every eye was on him, the whispers rising like a wave. He saw his parents in the crowd, their faces tight with disapproval. Caleb sat beside them, his gaze fixed on the floor. Ruth spoke first, her voice clear and unshaken. My grandson Ethan is a good man. He's kind, hardworking, and honest. But some of you have decided he's less because of who he loves. That stops tonight. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan felt exposed, his skin prickling under their stares. But Ruth's strength held him up. He stepped forward, his voice trembling but growing steadier. I'm gay. I didn't choose this, but I choose to be proud of it. You can hate me, but you don't get to erase me. The room erupted. Some shouted slurs. Others clapped. A few sat in stunned silence. Ethan's mother stood, her face pale. Ethan, you're tearing this family apart, she said, her voice breaking. No, Mom, Ethan said, his voice raw. You did that when you turned your back on me. Ruth raised a hand, silencing the crowd. I know what it's like to hide who you are, she said. I loved a woman once, and I lost her because I was afraid. I won't let Ethan lose himself. The revelation hit like a bomb. Gasps filled the room, and Ethan saw his mother's eyes widen. Caleb finally looked up, his face unreadable. Ruth continued, her voice steady. Clara was my heart, and I let her go. Ethan's braver than I was. He deserves better than shame. The mayor tried to regain control, but the crowd was a storm of voices. Some called Ruth a liar. Others whispered in awe. Ethan's father stood, his face red. This is a disgrace. He spat, storming out. His mother followed, but Caleb stayed, his eyes locked on Ethan. After the meeting, Ethan and Ruth walked home in silence, the night air cool against their skin. I'm proud of you, Ruth said finally. You faced them. I was terrified, Ethan admitted. But you, Gran, you told them everything. They needed to know, she said. For you, and for Clara. Back at the house, Ethan opened the box again. Among the letters was a small journal, Clara's handwriting filling its pages. Ruth, you are my home, no matter where I am. Ethan's eyes burned with tears. He understood now Ruth's fight was his fight, a legacy of love and courage. But the town wasn't done. The next morning, their front yard was vandalized. Hate scrawled across the fence. Ethan's heart sank, but Ruth's resolve didn't waver. We keep going, she said. For us, and for everyone who can't. The vandalism shook Ethan, but Ruth's fire kept him moving. They painted over the hateful words, their hands steady despite the hurt. Neighbors watched from their windows, some with pity, others with scorn. Ethan felt the town's pulse divided, angry, but not entirely lost. Jamie showed up that afternoon, his face grim. Heard about the fence, he said, handing Ethan a coffee. You okay? No, Ethan admitted, but I'm not running. Jamie nodded, his eyes warm. Good, because I'm sticking around too. Their friendship deepened, a quiet bond forged in shared struggle. They spent evenings at the coffee shop, planning a way to push back against the hate. Jamie suggested a community event, something to show Willow Creek that love wasn't a sin. Ethan hesitated, but Ruth's voice echoed in his mind, stand tall. Meanwhile, Ruth shared more of Clara's story. The journal revealed a woman who'd lived boldly, even after heartbreak. Clara had become an artist in Chicago, her paintings vibrant with the love she'd carried for Ruth. One entry hit Ethan hard. If I can't have you, I'll live for you. Every brushstroke is ours. Inspired, Ethan proposed a vigil for acceptance, a gathering to honor love in all its forms. Ruth loved the idea, her eyes sparkling. Clara would have been there. She said, "Let's do it for her." They spread the word, posting flyers around town. Some were torn down, but others stayed. A small victory. Jamie recruited a few allies, Mr. Tate from the hardware store, a librarian named Sarah, even a pastor who'd stayed silent too long. The vigil was set for Saturday, in the town square. But trouble brewed. Ethan's parents refused to speak to him, and Caleb's silence felt like a fresh wound. The night before the vigil, another note appeared, "You'll regret this." Ethan's stomach twisted, but Ruth's hand on his shoulder steadied him. "They're scared," she said. "Scared people lash out. Keep going." Saturday arrived, the square glowing with candles as dusk fell. Ethan stood with Jamie and Ruth, their faces lit by flickering light. A small crowd gathered, some supportive, others curious, a few hostile. Ethan spoke, his voice shaking but clear. "This is for everyone who's been told they don't belong. You do. We do." Ruth stepped forward, holding Clara's journal. "I lost the love of my life because I was afraid. Don't let fear win. Love is worth fighting for." The crowd was silent. Then a few clapped, their hands tentative but growing bolder. Jamie squeezed Ethan's hand, a silent promise. But as the vigil ended, a group of men lingered, their faces hard. One stepped forward, his voice low. "This ain't over. Carter." Ethan's heart raced, but he held his ground. Ruth's secret, Clara's courage, and Jamie's friendship were his strength. The fight was far from won, but for the first time, Ethan felt like he could face it. The vigil left Ethan buzzing with hope, but the threat from the men lingered like a storm cloud. He and Jamie walked home with Ruth, the candles' glow fading behind them. Ruth's hand was steady in his, but her silence worried him. "You okay, Gran?" he asked. "I'm proud," she said, her voice soft. "But I'm tired. Ethan, this fight, it's heavy." He nodded, feeling the weight too. At the house, they found another surprise, Caleb's truck in the driveway. Ethan's heart leapt, then sank. Was this another rejection? Or something else? Caleb stood on the porch, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. Ruth ushered them inside, her eyes wary but hopeful. Ethan sat across from Caleb, the air thick with years of brotherhood and recent betrayal. "Why are you here?" Ethan asked. Caleb's jaw worked, his eyes on the floor. "I was wrong. I should have stood up for you. I didn't know how to handle it." Ethan's throat tightened. "You let them kick me out. Caleb, you didn't even look at me." "I know," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "I was scared. Dad's so certain. But seeing you tonight, at the vigil, you're braver than all of us." The words hit Ethan hard, a mix of pain and relief. "What changed?" "Gran," Caleb said, glancing at Ruth. "Her story. And you, not backing down. I don't understand everything, but I don't want to lose my brother." Ruth's eyes glistened, and Ethan felt a crack in the wall he'd built. They talked late into the night, not fixing everything, but starting to mend. Caleb promised to try, to talk to their parents. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step. The next day, Ethan and Jamie planned another event, a small art show inspired by Clara's paintings. Ruth shared photos of Clara's work, vibrant canvases that spoke of love and defiance. She'd want this, Ruth said, a way to keep her alive. The show was set for the community center, a risky move in a divided town. Ethan and Jamie worked tirelessly, hanging flyers, securing a space. Ruth helped, her energy renewed by Clara's memory. But the threats continued. Tires. More notes. Ethan's fear grew, but so did his resolve. The night of the art show, the community center was half full, a mix of supporters and skeptics. Ethan stood by a painting of two women dancing under stars, Clara's signature in the corner. He spoke, his voice steady. "This is about love, not shame. Clara taught us that. My gran taught me that." The crowd listened, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Then, a crash glass shattered at the back. Ethan's heart stopped as a brick landed on the floor. A note tied to it, "Leave or pay." Panic erupted, but Ruth's voice cut through. "We stay," she said, her eyes blazing. "We always stay." Ethan grabbed Jamie's hand, their fingers interlocking. The fight was escalating, but so was their strength. Ruth's secret was no longer just hers, it was Ethan's, Jamie's, and Willow Creek's. And it was changing everything. The brick's weight lingered in Ethan's mind, heavier than the hate it carried. The art show ended in chaos, but the crowd's response surprised him. More stayed than fled, their faces a mix of shock and solidarity. Ruth stood by the broken window, her chin high, as if daring the world to throw another. The police came, took statements, but Ethan knew the culprits would slip through. Willow Creek protected its own, even the hateful ones. Still, the show wasn't a failure. People lingered, whispering about Clara's paintings, Ruth's courage, Ethan's defiance. A seed had been planted. Back home, Ethan sat with Ruth and Jamie, the box open on the table. Inside was Clara's final letter, unopened until now. Ruth's hands trembled as she broke the seal. "I couldn't read it before," she said. "I wasn't ready." The letter was short, its words piercing. "Ruth, I forgive you. Live boldly. For us. Love always. Clara." Ethan's eyes burned, and Ruth let out a soft sob, her fingers tracing the words. "She knew." Ruth whispered. "She always knew." Ethan took her hand, his voice steady. "You're living for her now, Gran. We both are." The next week was a blur of small victories and lingering threats. Caleb visited again, this time with their mother. The conversation was tense, her apologies halting. "I don't understand it," she said, her eyes on Ethan. "But I don't want to lose you." It wasn't acceptance. Not fully. But it was a crack in the wall. Ethan nodded, his heart heavy but hopeful. His father remained distant, but Caleb promised to keep trying. The town began to shift. Mr. Tate offered Ethan a job at the hardware store, a quiet gesture of support. The librarian, Sarah, started a book club for inclusivity, inspired by Ruth's story. Jamie and Ethan grew closer, their friendship blooming into something deeper, a tentative love that felt like a gift. One evening, Ruth called Ethan to the porch. She held a new letter, one she'd written. "It's for you," she said, "and for Clara." Ethan read it, his throat tight. "Ethan, you gave me back my courage. Clara's love lives in you, in every step you take. Keep fighting. Keep loving. You're my heart. Gran." Tears fell as Ethan hugged her, the weight of her words settling into his bones. The box, Clara's letters, Ruth's secret'd changed him, given him a purpose. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was home, and he'd fight for his place in it. Months later, the town square hosted another vigil, this one larger, brighter. Ethan stood with Jamie, Ruth, and Caleb, candles glowing in their hands. The crowd was diverse, young, old, supporters, and skeptics who'd started to listen. Ethan spoke, his voice clear. We're here because love wins. Not today, maybe, but always. Ruth smiled, her eyes on the stars, as if Clara were watching. Ethan felt her too, in the warmth of Jamie's hand, in Ruth's steady presence, in the town's slow change. The shame his family had cast on him was gone, replaced by a truth Clara and Ruth had taught him. Love was worth everything. And in that moment, Ethan knew he'd changed his life and Willow Creek's forever.